How did I get here? Here's a video that we have yet to make on this channel, and it's basically how we became plant-based. Let me start by saying I am not a health professional, I am not a doctor, I am not a nutritionist, I'm just a guy who's made a lot of mistakes and learned a lot along the way. So take this advice with a grain of salt, and as always, check with your doctor before you make major changes to your lifestyle and diet. Let me start at the beginning, in the before times, when I was extremely omnivorous. I basically ate all the meats, all the cheeses, everything like that. I loved pasta and bread, and I still eat vegetables, but not nearly as much as I do today. Obviously, lots and lots of meat and dairy and cheese. Fast forward a few years, and I was diagnosed with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and diabetes type 2. It was kind of a blow, and I didn't understand anything about it. I knew very little about diabetes. I understood high blood pressure to some extent and high cholesterol to some extent, but diabetes I knew nothing about. So we immediately started asking my doctor, how can I take care of this? How can I take care of that? And my doctor wasn't all that helpful. She said, well, basically go take a course. Tons of research, jumped into the YouTube diabetes people and got all these books on various things. And we discovered that exercise is going to help a lot. I was currently on high blood pressure medication by that point, and I started biking. We started walking a lot. I mean, like an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon, and I was biking several miles every day. So that started to help. My numbers started to come down. My blood pressure actually went so good, within about 2 months, I was off blood pressure medication. Keep in mind, I was not on diabetes meds yet, and I was not on cholesterol meds yet. Then we started doing more of a lower carb, higher fat, higher protein. Yep, you guessed it. Keto. We were actually doing that, and it was from a couple of books that I had found. Immediately, I started losing weight. My numbers started dropping. By the way, I was nearly 240 pounds when this started. More on that later. Started losing some weight. That helps with diabetes as well, but we were changing our diet in a lot of different ways. We were cutting out pastas and breads, and it was I didn't like that. That bothered me. But hey, you know what? If this is the healthier way to eat, then this is what we're gonna do. And then we started doing things just a little bit differently. We started getting into more plant-based types of stuff. And all of a sudden, one day, Derek and I were eating lunch, and I looked at her and I said, when's the last time we ate meat? And she's like, I don't know. It had to have been at least a week, maybe 2 weeks. Neither of us actually realized it, but what I noticed was I no longer had reflux. I was having really bad esophageal reflux for years. I was taking medication for it. I didn't need it anymore. I stopped taking that medication. Boom. Instantly, that was a sign. Then a little bit more research into the plant-based diet, we found out that it's actually really good for diabetes. But it was completely opposite of what I understood for what works for diabetes. And it just really made me start thinking, and I realized that the whole keto idea, the low carb, was not treating my diabetes. It was treating the symptoms, but it wasn't solving the problem. The problem was insulin resistance, and their pancreas beta cells were starting to get burnt out from overworking for years. Whereas a plant-based diet can stimulate insulin sensitivity. But I didn't know much about it at the time, and we were still eating a lot more fats and a lot more proteins and things like that, and trying to keep the carbs down because we still had that keto idea in our head. Well, over time, 6 months to a year or so, my numbers went down and then started coming back up. I had lost a bunch of weight, but I wasn't exercising quite as much. It's Florida. It's hot. Walking 2 hours every day in 95 degrees is not fun. Never mind biking. So that started to change, and then my numbers started to creep up. My blood sugar numbers started to creep up. Would like to say one thing though. I went from an 11.4 A1C down to like a 6.2 within 4 to 5 months of being diagnosed. So you can do it. This isn't really all about diabetes, but that was a big factor in why we went plant-based. Derica had been vegetarian at several points in her life. She could have been vegetarian, vegan her whole life and not cared. So this was easy for her. Not so much for me. Anyway, several months go by, a year goes by, and I started thinking, okay, you know what? I'm starting to believe this is just a chronic disease that's going to get worse as time goes on. Let's make life easier. I'll just go on metformin. I'll start taking the medications. And I kind of gave in. And here's the problem with that. When you do that, it's almost like you're giving yourself an excuse to not have to worry as much. But For me, it took some stress off because I was using Chronometer and watching every mouthful that I ate and counting every calorie and every gram of this, and I was driving myself crazy just trying to maintain decent numbers across the board. My triglycerides were high, my cholesterol was still high, my blood pressure was fine. It was marginally on the high side again, but it was fine. My blood sugar was finally in the pre-diabetes to almost non-diabetic numbers, like in the low fives, I want to say, 5.5, 5.6, something like that. I'm going off of memory here, so don't hold me to that. And I was struggling so hard just to maintain that it just didn't seem right. This just can't be right. Then my doctor, who I chose on purpose because she was a diabetes specialist, decided to have a baby. So I'm in between doctors right now, and it's been that way for a little while. So I haven't had blood work done in a little while, but I know from checking myself that my numbers were creeping up. I mean, I was taking checks at 180s and 200s and 220s a couple hours after eating, and that's not a good way to be. I had sort of just gone into this level where I was depressed all the time. I was upset. I didn't know what to do. I was drinking more. I went to visit my mom up in Pennsylvania, and she's having some health problems herself, and I started smoking again. Well, when I came back home, I quit smoking within, I believe it was about a week to a week and a half, and I was still kind of in that depressive phase. I didn't know what to do. Started looking into other diet options. We tried this, we tried that. We even tried a higher fat option. We tried lower carbs again, and nothing seemed to stick. Nothing was really working. And then I came across something that I'd read or seen years ago, and that was Dr. McDougall's starch solution. I forget how it came up, somebody on YouTube, a video or something, and I said, let me look into this again. So I bought the book, read the book. We started doing it, and I'm just here to tell you that right now, I have dropped 8 pounds in just a little over a week and a half, and my blood sugar numbers, instead of being 200 and 220, I just checked 2 hours after eating potatoes for lunch, was 135. Yesterday, after exercising, I hit 96. For those of you that don't know, anything over 135 is considered diabetic. 100 to 135 is pre-diabetic. For someone who's not taking any diabetes meds or blood pressure meds or cholesterol meds to hit numbers like that after 1 week on a new diet is absolutely astounding. So that brings us to where we are today. We are doing whole food, plant-based, no oil, sticking with everything we've already been doing, but we're going after a much higher carb count, much lower fat count. You won't see us using oil anymore. You won't see a lot of anything that adds fat to the food. And we're going to try taking our favorite foods and converting them to more of a starch solution or a whole food plant-based, no oil compliant type of diet. It's not earth-shattering, anything that we're doing here, but it is just a little bit of a step towards that starch solution compliancy to help. And based on some recent polls, you guys are looking for the same kind of food. Starch solution and no oil cooking were the two highest in a poll that I recently did. So yay, you guys want exactly what we're looking to do. Also, I'd like to just point something out. Since this whole thing started, since my diagnosis, I have dropped 33 pounds. I don't know exactly what my A1C is right now, but my blood pressure, when I checked it just the other day, was just about back to normal again. Keep in mind, I'm not on any medications. This is all just from diet and a little bit of exercise. I mean, literally 30 minutes on a stationary bike. That's not that much exercise, but that's what I do. One other thing I'd like to add to the success part is we both feel amazing. My mood is great. The depressive tendencies are gone. I pretty much stopped drinking in the past week or two also. I mean, I had a little bit over the weekend, but not that much, you know? You should always take your moderation in moderation. But we both feel a lot better. I'm sleeping better, mood is better, everything has just turned around. So I'm really curious to see where this takes us. This turned into a lot more talk about diabetes than I thought it was gonna, but this is where I am now, and that tells you how I got here. We have made a lot of mistakes. We have messed up so many things. I have read dozens of books, read hundreds of studies, watched thousands of hours of videos, and read I don't know how many articles and websites telling me everything that I need to do for my health. What I found is this is the simplest, most logical way to eat that just makes sense. So I hope you guys enjoy the new recipes that we're going to be coming out with. Some of them you've already seen some pictures on the community tab, and if you haven't, go check them out. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time on The Bistro.